What now for Sebastian Vettel? Fernando Alonso is back in the world of Formula One. We'll look at the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Austrian Grand Prix. Also, there's something going on with all of these engines. This is the Pit Box. Oh, there we go. First race is done, Gary. I tell you, if the world needed something of a little bit of an inspiration, Formula One delivered, eh?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what a race. And, we've been waiting so long for this. And, we were just expecting an Mercedes sort of domination, which they were quick. But I'll tell you what, the race was fantastic. There was a lot going on. And it was great that Formula One was back. And I think just made such a big impact with such a good race as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. Listen, we're going to go in depth into the race. We're going to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then, of course, we're going to look forward to this weekend as well. But big news that came out yesterday. And I must tell you, I knew it a day before because my good friend Mario got in touch with me and he said, I just want to let you know Alonso's not doing the Dakar. And when he told me that, I knew, well, there we go. He's signing to Formula One. So listen, here we got a little bit of video clip of Fernando Alonso telling us about his return to the world of Formula One.
Morning all, what a day. As you know, the bond between the team and myself is very strong. I'm very emotional because we won 2 World Championships together, but rest assured, I look forward. I'm not in the mirror. My return in F1 and with Renault was decided calmly. I'm sure of who I am today. I'm sure of what Renault prospect is. The team wants to be back in the podium, so do I. Renault is a brand that I'm very close and I'm very proud to represent it again. I'm coming to build and instill my winning culture in all the aspects of the team and the group Renault. I know how lucky I am to take a break in F1 and now come back. I think with the new rules, the sport will finally put the driver back at the center of the performance with more fairness between the teams and a better show on track. So, yeah, I'm ready. I'm back.
I tell you, he's got a different kind of spring in his step, Gary. There are a lot of people who sit and say, oh, my word, he's 39 years old. Why is he coming back? What about Zhang Wu? Aren't we giving the youngsters a chance? I got to say, I'm delighted that Alonso is back. And I'll give you a couple of reasons in a short while. What are your thoughts?
No, I think it's great. You've got to remember that, we spoke about this last weekend. Fernando Alonso is a brand in the motorsport world. And to have a brand like that in your category is absolutely fantastic. And I think that, the age thing, I don't think is going to be too much of a problem. Fernando Alonso, a lot of people will agree that he's probably one of the best all-round drivers to have raced in Formula One on the racetrack. I think the big thing for Fernando to conquer, however, is the fact that can he build the team around him? Can he get back to the days when Flavio ran that Renault team and they won those world titles together? I don't think he managed to do it at Ferrari. He certainly didn't manage to do it at McLaren during both of his stints. But as you quite rightly said, he's been out of Formula One. He's got a new spring in his step. He may see it differently to how he saw it before. And I think he also realizes, to be totally honest with you, that there's not much else out there to actually rival Formula One. Because at the end of the day, it is still the pinnacle of the sport. And I think a driver like a Fernando Alonso, I think, yes, it is certainly his last throw. And you've got to also think back to when Michael Schumacher made his comeback with Mercedes-Benz. I think he was 42 or 43. And he wasn't bad. I mean, he was going with Rosberg after having been out for 3 years. I think Fernando's been more active. He's been racing in sports cars, which are very, very high-tech cars and not that far away from Formula One cars in actual fact. So I don't think he's lost that much at all. So I'm excited that Fernando's back. He's always an exciting driver. I mean, you just got to throw your head back to those Ferrarios when he started, and almost every single start he made up positions on the track. He's the real deal. And I think, from a Renault point of view, I don't think they could have asked for more. And on top of that all, you're probably going to find that Fernando, being the brand that he is probably going to bring some financial investment into the team as well. So you'd find that the cost of having him there is not exorbitant at all. It might even be a net deal. So I think it's just a win-win all around.
Yeah, I endorse that 100%. I'm delighted that he's back. I have issues with him. I think sometimes when he raced after his two championship years with Renault, he then went to McLaren, and he didn't enjoy the fact that Lewis Hamilton pushed him so hard, and they destroyed a championship together. But that's okay. And thereafterwards, he went to Ferrari, and he had chances there. It wasn't the greatest car, but he should have done more for it. And I agree with you. And this is my biggest problem with Alonso, is sometimes he's got too many demons. And perhaps now with age, he's matured and he's gotten rid of those kind of demons. And he's never built a team around him. And this is what concerns me the most about Fernando Alonso. He had Briatore, and Briatore ran the roost. After that, he had Ron Dennis, but he immediately had conflict with Ron Dennis because Ron Dennis is an Englishman and an Englishman driver. We thought when he went to Ferrari, being a Frenchman and being a European, that they would get on together, but they had their issues as well, Gary. And thereafterwards he went to McLaren. It didn't work out too well for him, and that was more so. He went back to McLaren. That was more so with the fact of Honda. But now he's got another chance. He goes into a team as by definite the team leader. And next year might be a year of progress. But 2022, when all of these new rules come in, the budget caps come in or whatever, you've got to believe somewhere, I've got to believe, that Renault has to be within the top three, without a doubt.
Well, I think it's a make or break deal for them. They've been in the game a long time. Their re-entry as a works team, they've been around for a long time now. They haven't had results as a factory team, and certainly they're looking for it. We know that. I think they really had a lot of hope in Daniel Ricciardo. It didn't work out for them at all. This for them as well. I think everybody's in the position where, as I said, Alonso knows this is the last of it now. The next couple of years, whatever he gets out of this deal is the last of it. For Renault as well, they can't afford to just be there indefinitely, not shaping like they kind of did last year, for example. So I think yes, I think there'll be a lot of motivation in their team. Nothing's going to be spared, and as you quite rightly said, the rules changing is a perfect time to get involved. I also think that Fernando, during the McLaren Honda years, I think Formula One went through all the changes. A lot of the stalwarts of the game, I think, were not happy with the engines and the way things were working out, the amount of penalties. Just the new regulations for some of the older guys, I think was a challenge, just in terms of enjoyment. But I think, as I said, having been out of it now for a while, I think there'll be a newfound appreciation from Alonso for Formula One, and I think that's critical in when it comes down to track performance and doing your job the best that you can possibly do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's a lot going on at the moment regarding Fernando Alonso, and then of course it also throws. We're going to get into a little bit of Sebastian Vettel in a couple of seconds, Gary. But there are so many different variables that could happen now in the sort of driver market. But let's stay a little bit on Fernando. He goes into this team. His teammate, more than likely, if he performs, will be Esteban Ocon. Ocon is going to have to raise his game, because I tell you, this Chinese driver, Zhang Zhu, who was very unfortunate in Formula 2 over this last weekend, is a great potential for the Renault team. So I don't know if Alonso is going to have any say into who his teammate is going to be, but he goes in there as a definite number one.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I don't think he'd come back on any other terms. He's back here, as you said. He wants to be on the podium, and they're off. But you get a couple of things right. It could be a very, very different situation for that entire team. And I think it comes back again, and I know we may be harping on it slightly, but it comes down to everybody's ability to build that team, from Orbital to Alonso to everybody else in the mix there. It's how they're going to gel away from the track, and how they're going to be able to put the whole thing together. And I think there's certainly enough money, there's enough resource around there. It comes down to the people now, and it's really up to those top players in the team.
Yeah, listen, I must say, welcome back, Fernando Alonso. He's still got to do the Indy 500. And it's something that he really, really wants to go out there and try and win. and perhaps now he's got a new sort of, step going forward. At least he knows where his future is going to go. And I admire him for wanting to go and do Dakar, and he did Dakar, and maybe thought about doing it again. But he is a circuit racing driver. He's a single-seater racing driver, and that is what he's brilliant at. And maybe that gives him that motivation for the Indy 500, and then, of course, going back into F1.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I was him, and this is only my opinion, I'd probably just park the Indy 500 program and just focus on the Formula One deal for next year. So, listen, but it's exciting for us as motorsport fans to see Alonso at the Indy 500. Yes, he wants that triple crown, and it's so few people that have even had the opportunity of even putting it together. He can put it together. But I kind of just get the feeling that the F1 is the motivation right now, and he sort of, and I think he has been sort of just, just passing time. Yes, and it sounds crazy, but the driver of that caliber has these choices available to him to go and do Indy, to go and do Dakar, the top team, to go and do whatever you want to do, Le Mans, etc. With the top team, win Le Mans. I don't know. Indy's another animal all on its own. He is quick. He showed these first appearances. He was super quick, and I think really had a chance of winning the race. Let's see what happens. I want to see him back in Formula One in one piece and giving it a full go and in full health in Formula One.
100%. Listen, if I'm looking away from the screen, I'm trying to get this right now, Gary, because you can share what we're doing with a whole lot of people, and I think people need to be watching us at the same time. And I must say we're getting some fantastic views on our the pit box, which is wonderful. So there we go. And if we get across some comments, I'm going to try and get through them as well. We've got a big hi to Ken McDonald, Isabel, Tiago de Santos, Zach Anguris is there, Paul, Stan, a whole bunch of people coming on as well. So that's fabulous to see. Okay, Alonso's back. What now, Gary, for Sebastian Vettel? Yesterday, when the Alonso announcement was made, there was a German publication that came out and said, listen, on Thursday, we've got big news. And I waited today and I went, okay, where is this big news? The big news that they released was that Vettel was in discussion with Red Bull and Renault. Okay. And we'll talk about that picture in a couple of seconds from now. But there was a rumor, or there is a rumor, that Dietrich Mateschitz from Red Bull, the big boss of Red Bull, told Helmut Marko, get Sebastian Vettel back. You got to believe it's still a possibility.
I think it is. So if you look at their whole Formula One operation, even the AlphaTauri drivers, you've got Kvyat, you've got Gasly. We know that they've both been in Red Bull. They were both dropped from the Red Bull team, put back to AlphaTauri, or Toro Rosso as it was just called back then. The fact of the matter is, although their junior program is very good, they've got a lot of support, they've got a lot of drivers coming through ranks, that if there was somebody else to fill those two seats, that younger driver would have been in there. The fact of the matter is, you've got both of the demotees, if there's such a word, from the Red Bull team in that AlphaTauri team right now, and you've got Albon, which is doing a good job. You've got to say Albon is doing a good job. But I think it would be hard for a team like Red Bull to not have a guy like Vettel. And you've got Verstappen in Vettel in a team. I think it could be a good show. There's no two ways about it. Almost as good as the showdown between Hamilton and Vettel if he had to land up at Mercedes-Benz, for example. I think these guys, they've done their thing. I don't think it's about money anymore, although I think it certainly would be a big discussion. And I think, you probably find the teams are able to do favourable deals with these guys, as I'm sure Renault's just done with Alonso. I think the same kind of thing for Vettel and Red Bull. So who knows? I think there's still the Mercedes-Benz possibility. You never know what's going to happen there. There's Aston Martin coming onto the scene next year. Bottas could find a drive in Aston or stay with Mercedes. Depending on the investment, for Vettel, even Aston Martin may be an option. It sounds crazy right now to say that, but as things develop, strange things happen. But so I think there's more opportunity than what we thought for Vettel a couple of weeks ago, and I think that's encouraging because, as we said as well, for a 4-time world champion at his age to not be on the grid, it's not great. And of course, he is another big brand in terms of the Formula One business. As Formula One, you don't want to lose Vettel either.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm glad you brought up Aston Martin. I'm going to talk about that in a short while, about Sebastian Vettel, let's say hypothetically Aston Martin. But I'm going to ask Fritz if he can bring that picture back up of Sebastian Vettel and Mattia Binotto. this relationship seems to have soured terribly, Gary. And somewhere in between Binotto saying we offered Vettel a 1-year deal to Vettel saying he got a phone call saying they're not renewing his contract, somewhere in between there is the truth. Binotto came out saying it wasn't a good race from Sebastian Vettel, sort of being quite patronizing towards him, but then coming out on the other side saying Vettel will definitely bounce back. There seems to be a tremendous disharmony between Sebastian Vettel and Mattia Binotto, not the rest of the team. Vettel is one of those. He's never said a bad thing about any team that he's driven with. He's a consummate professional. He reminds me a lot of Michael Schumacher, always trying to uplift and always trying to build a team. Yet all of a sudden, Mattia Binotto seems to be now having a go at Sebastian Vettel. And it worries me that, I mean, do we even see Sebastian Vettel finishing out this whole season?
Yeah, listen, your point is you spot on there. And I think that, if another deal presents itself and there's, somewhere else for him to go next year, it's a strong possibility that they'll call it a day, because it's a very uncomfortable environment to be in for a driver, especially at that level where you need to be performing at your best all the time. It's not easy to be where he is right now. If he did pack it in, you've got to believe that he's got somewhere else to go. It's just these, being at this level of the sport, it's also an emotional thing. You need to feel you've got the team behind you. You need to feel like they want to do well. It's just how it is. And when you start losing that, and you're not wanted there, it's I think very difficult even just to turn up at the racetrack.
Yeah, geez, I tell you, we'll talk a little bit about Vettel and perhaps something like moving to Aston Martin next year. But a couple of other people, I was hoping that Ferrari would give Alonso Vettel's seat. There we go. Oh, how's it to our fabulous watchmaker Mark Gold here this evening? Barry says Alonso has absolute pedigree. It feels nostalgic. Imagine Vettel at Red Bull. Wow, exciting times ahead. Fangio was winning world titles at 45 years of age. And Ken says, I don't see Seb finishing the season there. I agree. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. But Gary, let's go on to possibilities for Sebastian Vettel. We know now that there's nothing at Renault. We still aren't 100% convinced about what's happening at Mercedes, even though the Mercedes boss came out and said, we're very happy with both of our drivers. We know that things can change drastically in the world of Formula One. Another rumor is that Toto Wolff and the big boss of Mercedes don't get on too well. Let's look at Aston Martin with Lawrence Stroll as the big boss. This could be an ideal opportunity for Sebastian Vettel to maybe go in his own terms, to create a team and build a team and turn Aston Martin into a proper powerhouse, if that scenario had to arise.
It may well be, and it's not a crazy idea. There's obviously a tie-up between Mercedes and Force One right now, whatever they're called, the VWT cars. But the car's quick, and depending on the money that's around, and in terms of the future investment, the budget cap's coming into play. It's going to certainly change things as well. There's a huge opportunity, for Vettel to get involved here. And I don't think it's totally off the wall at this point in time. So, the Mercedes things, as I said, I don't think is dead at all. I think the fact that Toto has given himself the opportunity to make a decision later on in the year, which is kind of what everybody should be doing. I think there's definitely some space for Vettel. I mean, Vettel could even land up being, try and negotiate an ownership deal and take some ownership in the Aston Martin team. These guys are also looking for things to do post their career, so it may well be a good opportunity. But on paper right now, the Red Bull deal, from a performance point of view, I think would certainly be something that it would be difficult for him to say no to that.
Yeah. Listen, keep your comments coming in. If we can't reply to them now, I promise you we will get to them when we can. Okay. Now, Gary, let's look back at the first, I was going to say the last Grand Prix, but the first Grand Prix of the season, of course, last week in Austria. This week we're in Austria again. And, I know that, people came out and went, gee, I can't believe the unreliability and cars breaking down, etc., etc. It is very, very traditional of a first race of a season. You are going to get these issues where your systems that you were testing in preseason testing might fail, and we saw that this past weekend.
Yes, look, I think the biggest one obviously was Verstappen. That was the biggest letdown. And, we've come to also expect that these cars, you expect them to be reliable. And I hear what you're saying, but the new technology, once it was ironed out, the cars do run. And it was surprising to see that, that Verstappen didn't get to the end of the Grand Prix with technical trouble. But, it was 8 Grand Prix. Everybody had to come out here with everything going for them, with all the guns loaded. If you got an opportunity to have maximum power, you had to have it, because it's a short season. You had to come out firing. So you had to throw caution to the wind. So who really knows what the situation was? But unfortunately, it just is the case. But let's see. And it's going to continue on like that, because the guys know that they don't have a long time to do it. You're going to see, I think, maybe even more incidents on the track, because the guys are racing. They've got to get the job done, and they've got to get it done now.
For sure. All right, let's go through the race, and let's start off with Valtteri Bottas. A superb drive. And Gary, I think there's a lot of times where people don't really understand how difficult it is to beat someone like Lewis Hamilton. He managed the race extremely well, although Lewis did get very, very close to him. And eventually, of course, later on in the race, both of the drivers were told to watch out, because there seemed to be a gearbox electronic problem with that Mercedes. But this was the start that Valtteri Bottas needs. And needed, and he has to try now and follow through, because it is extremely difficult to be Lewis's teammate, and then of course to even try and beat him. So well done, brilliant drive from Valtteri.
Look, outstanding. The qualifying, I think, was great to see qualifying. Up until that point, I believed Hamilton was going to, a lot of other people, I think, thought Hamilton had everything under control. In qualifying around, Bottas did a great job to put their car on pole over a one lap as well. To beat a guy like Hamilton is no mean feat, and then did a great job in the race. I mean, the safety car issues were there. He did the job. I mean, it was fantastic. And I think, to be honest with you, with the short season and Hamilton having got that penalty now, he has, I think, the best chance he's ever got. Because one more mistake by Hamilton, anyway, it really does knock him back. And you're a quarter of the way through the championship already. So this is his chance. He's got to put it all together. Got to keep it going. The fact that they're going back to Austria, where he did win the Grand Prix, he did put the car in pole position. I mean, it does bode well for him. So this is his time.
Yeah, I tell you, he's got a fabulous chance. And of course, the safety car did play a massive issue when it came to the Grand Prix on last Sunday. And we have to be circumspect about it. Don't forget, Mercedes still finished 1 and 2 on the track. And they might have finished by miles and miles ahead. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes from now. But let's go through our podium. Second place, and that's the reason why I'm wearing this cap this evening, which is Crime's, what's CSI? Crime Specialty Investigations, Crime Scene Investigations. Because this was a crime scene. Charles Leclerc getting second for Ferrari. What a brilliant drive. This guy did not give up, and I must say a phenomenal effort from him. But Gary, if there was ever Christmas in July for a team, it happened to Ferrari. That was not a result they were expecting, not a result, in 50 more races or whatever, they couldn't ever have predicted that. But they'll take it, and maybe it gives them an element of hope somewhere along the line. But my word, is this car struggling.
It really is. And we sort of expected it before the season, but yes, they are battling along. It's not an easy run. Yes, the safety cars helped him, but at the end of the day, he got overtakes done, he got the job done. And the one thing that I will say is that when you've got a car that's not capable of winning or achieving any really serious results, and you've got a driver that's able to hustle the thing up there and actually put the result on the table, you have to say, from a Ferrari point of view, they do have something in Charles Leclerc. There's no two ways about it, and you've got to back their decision to make him their sort of number one driver and place their championship hopes in him for the next couple of years. So yes, I think but again, the same thing. It goes down to the same point just now. It's a short season. It makes this result even better to be able to take that sort of many points in the opening Grand Prix with a car that's not that great. I think the big question is, what have they done during the week? If it is the engine and it's not performing to the point where it needs to perform, they're going to have the same problem, which is going to be a difficult weekend for them. And if you look at all the Ferrari-powered cars, everybody had a hard time this weekend. They all went slower. So whatever's going on there in that engine, and I think all of us would like to know what was in the car last year when it beat Hamilton in Monza, and the FIA's done the deal with them. We'd love to know, because clearly something has changed and it's not going.
Yeah, well, that's 100%. We're going to talk engines a little bit later on in the show, but outstanding drive from Charles Leclerc. I must say, I was like, wow, well done, young man. Okay, then all of a sudden, the wonderful surprise on the podium was the brilliant and just likable Lando Norris. And can you believe it, Gary? In the first time in the history of Formula One, this is the first time that Mercedes, McLaren, and Ferrari have ever been on the podium. And the wonderful thing for Lando Norris is, during the race he struggled a little bit, but he fought back and he tried his best. But the last 2 laps, where he was told, listen, and they use all of their coding, but he was told, you're 6.8 seconds behind, but Lewis has got a 5-second penalty. He put the hammer down, and I tell you, he came within, he finished 4.8 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton and got this incredible podium for himself and for McLaren in a Renault engine, beating Renault. What a turnaround that Zach Brown and Andreas Seidel have done within this team. And have Ferrari signed the wrong guy?
Well, I think what I wanted to say about that is that, having got Sainz in your as your teammate now, having just signed for Ferrari, I mean, listen, it's only going to boost your share price to be able to go and beat a Ferrari driver, a Ferrari contracted driver. So this is huge for Lando Norris. I think last year it certainly showed the speed. I think his breakthrough would have come in Paul Ricard. It didn't go their way there. I mean, he had a fantastic race, but his qualifying pace was always there. And so, yes, I think that he's certainly one of the top guys. And if he continues like this, his share price is going to be fantastic. So great job, and he really does have a point to prove this year by beating Sainz the way that he did this last weekend.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff. Great drive from Lando Norris. There we go. That's looking at the top 3. Let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, Gary, from this Grand Prix. The good, you got to say, Bottas, Leclerc, Lando Norris, and of course the rest of the top 10. You've got Lewis Hamilton over there. You've got Carlos Sainz, who scored some good points. Perez, Pierre Gasly, always did a good job. And then, of course, Giovinazzi getting in the points. Vettel, can you believe it? The first time in his career he's ever finished in 10th place, and he scored a solitary point. Giovinazzi and Alfa Romeo will be breathing a sigh of relief to get those 2 points, because it means they're guaranteed of some kind of money when it comes to TV rights, Gary. And with the way Ferrari's performing, you cannot believe there is much hope for the likes of for Alfa Romeo and for the Haas team. So that was very, very, very special. That's looking at the good. However, I do want to put a question mark over Esteban Ocon. I know he's been out of the sport for nearly 2 years. It's welcome. It's fabulous to see him back there. But scoring points, wonderful. But his pace, Gary, is very, very worrying. He wasn't anywhere close to Ricciardo. And also in race pace, maybe he needed just to get some mileage. But he wasn't what I was hoping for.
No, not at all. And Ricciardo, I mean, half a second a lap throughout the weekend was really the gap, which is significant in Formula One. And in particular from a guy that's supposed to be one of the new hot shots on the scene. I don't think the time out the car at his age and being involved the way he was, Mercedes didn't count that much against him. It wasn't the weekend that he needed. And I think, when he came out and said he's just not sure how Ricciardo is able to do the lap time that he's doing versus, it reminds you of Pierre Gasly against Verstappen. It's a problem there. So, if he gets it right this weekend, I think he put out the flames and he'll be back on track. But if he has another weekend like that, it's going to start casting a bit of doubt, and the panic sets in, and so it goes downhill. So it's an important weekend for Ocon, this one.
Yeah, I agree on that one as well. Let's look at the bad, and we're going to go through certain of the teams. The Haas team, I mean, if you sit there and think a year ago, and you got to try and be circumspect about it. It is the first race of the season, as opposed to being the 7th or 8th race of the season. This team qualified in 5th position in Austria last year. They were 17th and 18th this weekend. In race pace, they actually were not too bad, Gary, but they weren't challenging for top 10 places. But both of their cars had overheating in the brakes. They told us that they've come with zero development at this stage. It seems as though they are lacking a little bit of financial input, and hopefully Formula One will be able to assist them. But these initial Grand Prix, like the first one that we've had, where Alfa Romeo scored points, this now is a chance for them to get points to secure some kind of funding for next year. But the team, unfortunately, I think are on the brink of not being there. They're in a more precarious position, I believe, than Williams, for example.
I think so too. You got to. There's no major sponsorship in that team. Gene Haas is running that program himself, basically. Difficult to understand what's happened in his world since everything's happened this year. They need the results. They need the income that Formula One is going to give them for finishing in the points. I think it's a very, very difficult season for Haas as well. And there has been rumor and what have you that Gene Haas is taking a long, hard look at the Formula One program. How true it is or not, is difficult to understand sometimes. But being quick and being on the pace and having a chance at a good result is all motivating. And not being there, you got to look at it and say, well, I'm spending a lot of money on this program. Is it really worth it? So I think yes, the team is under big pressure to actually perform. I am surprised in a way that they stuck with both the drivers they did. But anyway, they've got what they've got, and it's again, let's see what they do this weekend. But I don't expect anything different.
Yeah, I think they're still in for a very, very difficult weekend, especially with that Ferrari power unit as well, which seems to be a problem. The other bad, unfortunately, you got to say Red Bull Racing. We'll talk about the incident with Alex Albon and Lewis Hamilton, but Max Verstappen having that retirement, he was sort of on the pace with Valtteri Bottas on the more durable tyre initially. Yeah. His first lap was amazing, just to keep everybody else behind him. We don't know what could have happened, but this is an issue that they've got to be very, very concerned about. They've worked very, very hard. Honda have worked incredibly hard to bring them up to some kind of a pace. Not a failure that you can take too lightly, and hopefully they've found a remedy for it. But desperate for Verstappen to come out of the first Grand Prix, Gary, with 0 points.
Yeah, big problem. I think two issues. Yes, the reliability issue was one thing, and the other thing was not being able to find the pace on Saturday with the red tyre. I think that was, it's something that, we've always known Red Bull to be a fantastic car, chassis-wise, aerodynamically wise, with Adrian Newey and the team they've got. The car's generally been very, very good. So to have not been able to find that pace on the red tyre, I think for me was probably the most sort of concerning thing. The fact that he put the car where he did on the yellow tyre was an outstanding job. But needless to say, a lot more pressure and a lot more sort of effort to do that. And you needed sort of the cards to fall right for yourself in the race to take advantage of the strategy, which I actually believe that he had what it took on Saturday afternoon. But the opening stint of the race on Sunday, I think it just showed you that those Mercedes-Benzes, there was no ways he was going to be able to do anything with those guys if the race had just continued on as it had without the safety cars.
And that's why it brings up the very, very important discussion on engines, which we're going to get to in a short while. Well, also the bad, you've got to say Ferrari. As much as Charles Leclerc got a second place and Vettel finished in the points after his spin, that in normal conditions, Gary, had we not had all of the failures that we had, and yes, we can go on about yes, but that did happen, and that's what created the result. That car is the 5th fastest car on the circuit out of 10 teams. So it's actually the ninth, 11th fastest car out there. It is a massive, massive problem for Ferrari. They are incredibly slow. They're coming this weekend with a new front wing. There's a picture of them. That's how slow they are. Unfortunately, snail's pace. Gary, what is it, this difference between the drag of the car that they have, that they say that this is the issue? I cannot believe it. And we'll discuss engine in a short while, but what is this? What is the drag of the car?
Well, I mean, it's not flowing through the air. There's for example, to put it in layman's term, you instead of having a beautifully flowing wing, you'd have like a board at the back of the car, and it's acting as a parachute, holding the car back. That's if there's too much drag, essentially. But you know, I find it hard to believe that all of a sudden every single Ferrari car has got a drag problem. You know, and that's the big issue. They were all slow, and that's the big problem.
100%. And of course, that Ferrari pace affects Haas and it affects Alfa Romeo, and we saw that in qualifying. Also, the bad, and we carry on with Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel's spin. And, you know, Gary, when the world is on top of you, you've lost your drive, you know, kick a dog when he's down, all of a sudden it was the last thing that Sebastian Vettel needed to do. Yes, it was a massively ambitious effort that he tried to go past Carlos Sainz on the inside. But he did spin around, and of course the media is going to take it completely differently. But he is struggling in this car, and he has for the last season as well. And you know, here he is saying going to be another chance to do better than last Sunday. But I suppose when the chips are down and it feels like the world is against you, Gary, it's tough to lift those shoulders.
It is tough, but I mean, listen, he's a 4-time world champion. You know, he's got to dig deep and do something. You know, if he's going to be at the track and he's going to be racing, he's got to try and do what he can do. I think, listen, it was unfortunately spun. We've seen it a couple of times with Vettel, though. You know, the front of the car in that situation, you know, going around, but he was also trying to get out of actually hitting Sainz. It was an optimistic move, but I think once he realized it wasn't going to happen, did his best to get out of it, and that's why we had the result that we did with the car turning around the way it did. So just, yeah, it's a tough break for when you sort of, you know, I think it was last year when he spun off also in a good position, just lost the car all on his own. It was Monza was one of them, I think, and somewhere else. Yeah. There's been a couple of instances where he just hasn't gone to plan for him. But you know, there was no, you know, if he left the car as driving to Sainz, he would have probably taken them both out anyway, or maybe had a chance of staying on, but you know, taking Sainz out of the race. I think we've got to say well done for the guy for trying to get out of it. It didn't work well for him, but for sure, a bit of pressure coming through, trying to make an overtake, trying to get up to your teammates. You know, that must be some of the situation there.
Yeah, it's not easy. And then, of course, also the bad situation, you know, bad is a tough word, but we're going to use bad, and that is Albon and, of course, Lewis Hamilton. And there's been so much talk about it. I called it immediately. I said 5-second penalty, a 10-second penalty. It has to be that way. So many people came out and said, oh, yeah, but, I mean, that's just Albon in his youth trying to be, you know, too exuberant going around the side. No. Gary, that was a definite penalty. Lewis could have done a lot more to avoid touching wheels with Alex Albon. Albon was way ahead of him, but you've got to feel desperate for this for young Albon. Twice he's been taken out from by Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, and a podium position, which is tough for him. So I think that Vettel, for sure, yes, I agree, could have done more to get out of the situation, but you've got to understand his mindset at that point in time was probably already at the next corner. He knows he's got a fast car on the Mercedes-Benz. Was, you know, if I can get the drive out of here, I'm going to have another go at this guy into the next corner, and I can probably get the place back. Remember, he was in the red tyres, which was the tyre to have at that point in time after the safety car allowed him to have that red tyre. So he did have a lot more grip. Hamilton wasn't going to, he obviously knew that, and he wasn't going to give it up. He was going to give it a full go. So it is about risk as well and reward. And I just think it's one of those situations where, you know, if he was fighting for a championship, let's put it this way, if he was fighting for a championship and it was the last race of the season and he needed to finish, Hamilton wouldn't have put himself in that position. He would have probably been able to back out and let Albon go past. But the fact that they're fighting for a championship, it's the first round, every point's going to count here. He couldn't take the conservative route. He had to go for it. I don't think it was intentional that he hit Albon at all, and I certainly don't think Albon was wrong for putting that move on Hamilton. And if I was Albon, for sure, I'd be mad. at the result. I mean, it's really disheartening to be taken up by the same guy twice. But you've also got to understand, Hamilton's going for the championship. They're racing, and hence it's a racing incident. And the 5-second penalty, I think, was totally acceptable.
Yeah, 100%. There we go. So that puts that one down. And of course, Lewis Hamilton finished second on the track, finished fourth on the timesheets because of the 5-second penalty. The final thing when we look at last weekend is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And here, unfortunately, it's come up time and time again. 6 times world champion in Lewis Hamilton. On his pit radio, if it's not, the tires are going off, and Bono, help me out here. What am I meant to do? How can I do it? And then he goes and puts in fastest laps. So I don't always take what Lewis says too literally, honestly. However, when, in this Grand Prix, James Allison came on the radio to them and said, guys, there's a sensor issue. Don't ride the curbs. Cool, no problem. It's a directive to both of the drivers or whatever. And then Lewis Hamilton goes on and goes to his pit crew, and we hear it all going, yeah, but Valtteri's riding the curbs more than me. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What are we, 5 years old?
It's normal. It's normal racing driver stuff.
Is it?
They're trying to win. And listen, it's a big game as well, as you quite Formula One. He knows everybody can hear what he's saying on the radio. It's a game. You're playing. You're not only driving. You're playing the psychological game as well. So who knows what he was on about. But listen, it's all about the characters, and that's what makes the game great, because everybody's different in their own right. They all approach it completely differently. But yes, but you do get the sense that he felt that he should be the one that was in the lead and not Bottas, and it must have been irking him. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah. I know. Okay, brilliant. There we go. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, before we start looking at this weekend, let's talk about this engine situation. Starting off with Renault. Renault, we know, just somehow cannot get the design of their car just too fantastic at the moment, and one would expect a lot more from Renault. They are a factory team. On the flip side, McLaren are still running with Renault engines for the remainder of this season, and we saw, yes, they're not on the pace of Red Bull with the Honda, and they're not on the pace of Mercedes-Benz, but they were definitely quicker than the Ferrari. So there's nothing wrong with the power unit that Renault are developing and giving to themselves or their customer teams. It's more in a sense of design around that. So I'm happy to sit there and say I think Renault's up there with just about the best if it was in the right kind of chassis. But now you get Honda, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Ferrari, Gary, let's start off here. After the Singapore Grand Prix last year, all of a sudden everything went crazy and they have got no pace. I cannot believe that a team like Ferrari, and I know that they haven't been able to work over the whole COVID-19 time period, you cannot believe that Ferrari cannot find a solution to whatever they were told by the FIA they cannot do.
So the problem is, it goes back to last year, as you say, if they went down a road which was not illegal, which looks like the case, a lot of time, a lot of investment goes into that process. Now they've got to take it all off and find a straight way to do it. It's not so easy. So we don't even know where they are in terms of level. Are they back to a 2018 type level? Where's this? We don't know, because other guys are obviously making improvements as well. So it's as you quite rightly said, it's strange that they find themselves in this position. And the fact of the matter is, you've got now a whole herd of other cars that are running your motor. You've got to get this thing right for everybody, even your customers. You're paying you probably good money to run that engine. So, is it possible to do it in a week? I don't believe so. Let's see what happens this weekend. But they've got a bit of an issue right now.
But I mean, Gary, if we go back and if they were told us after Singapore, and it was all about the second sensor that was in the car, and other teams were suspecting that maybe they were using oil. I just don't see how they could have become so bad, or whatever they decided after Singapore as a new development engine for 2020 this year. And yes, we've only seen it last week, but I mean, they were hopeless on the straights. And Ferrari as a car weren't so bad in sort of the medium and high speed corners, but down the straights, every single one of those Ferrari backed cars was significantly slower. Even the ones that ran as little wing as possible just to try and get some straight line speed, you could see that they were just nowhere. And I don't buy the fact that Binotto says, oh, well, you know, we're coming with a new front wing. If we go back to what you said earlier with the drag, it's not going to assist them. They clearly have got a power issue.
No, I think that's clear to see. And the big question is, how do you fix it in the time frames that you have, and what do they have at the factory in the pipeline that is going to allow them to be quicker? The perfect example was Monza last year. The car was quick, and it was quick in a couple of races with the horsepower. It made a massive difference, and they shot them to the front of the field. Can they produce something like that again, which is within the regulation? That's the big question.
Yeah. Now, we get on to Honda and Mercedes, and Honda have done an unbelievable job. Honda were right up there with Mercedes, in my opinion, in terms of how powerful the engine is. All of a sudden, Mercedes come out. We saw it in pre-season testing, and then we see it this weekend, Gary, the first weekend in Austria. They are streets ahead. So there are definite solutions because Mercedes know how to find these solutions. But even Honda have come out and said, we don't know what Mercedes are doing, but I mean, they've just got more power.
Listen, to sit here and even try and sort of understand where the power comes from for us it's virtually impossible. The way the unit, the engines work, and everything else that gets bolted onto the electronics, there's just so many things. At the end of the day, Mercedes is a great team that dominated this era of Formula One since this new engine was introduced.
Oh, I think we lost Gary there. Are you back? Oh, I've lost audio. Okay, can't hear anything. All right. Okay, I've got zero audio, so maybe you can hear me. I'm just going to see if Fritz can hear me in the studio. No? Okay. There we go. Okay, I have got it. Okay. I think we lost Gary there for a second, but we'll catch him in a couple of seconds. The engine story, of course, and the power unit, we call it a power unit, is very, very complicated. But a team like Ferrari have to up their game drastically, never mind for themselves, but also for their customer teams. A team like Haas, a team like Alfa Romeo, who are desperate for points, need those points for the survival, for their own survival in the world of Formula One. And if Ferrari can't deliver that to them, unfortunately, that's going to put paid to their chances of remaining in the world of Formula One. Okay, let's move on to this weekend's version 2 of the Austrian Grand Prix. It is now called the Styrian Grand Prix, of course, because the circuit is amongst the magnificent Styrian mountains in Spielberg in Austria. Can we expect a lot of the same, what we saw last weekend? The teams have only had a week to work out all of these maladies. A team like Haas with the brake issues and the heating issues hopefully will have found some kind of solutions. Honda with Max Verstappen and their engine hopefully have found some kind of solutions. The big question is, did Mercedes have a proper issue with their gearbox sensor, or was it playing a little bit of, gamesmanship with everybody else because of the domination that they had? Gary, I mean, a problem like a sensor on a gearbox for Mercedes-Benz this weekend, do you think, whoops, I think he's gone. Do you think they would have fixed the situation? I'll answer for Gary. Okay, I'll answer for Gary, don't worry. I'm sure that they already identified during the course of the first Grand Prix exactly where that problem was. That's how efficient the Mercedes team is, and I'm sure they've found a solution specifically for this weekend, so that they're either going to instruct their drivers on something, or they would have most probably found a solution. In terms of reliability, the Mercedes cars were very, very good. There was something that did worry me a little bit about the Mercedes powered cars, and that was a little bit of smoke. We saw it in Sergio Perez's car during the course of the weekend. Otmar from Racing Point came out and sat there and said, no, it was just a little bit of dropping oil. And as soon as I hear dropping oil, I go, hold on a second, how come there's more oil? But Ferrari had an oil problem as well, so we've got to check that out. But also, in the Mercedes cars themselves, early on in the race, there was also some excess smoke coming out of the car, which might have been just some droplets of oil that they had as well. So, okay, so that's one thing that we've got to look out for this weekend. For the rest of them, McLaren will be really pumped up. They were very reliable and they were quick. If they can convert that one-lap qualifying pace into race pace, that's what they really need, because they seem to struggle at certain parts of the race. You saw where Lando Norris started, he dropped back, and then eventually he got through purely because of other people's issues, besides the fantastic final 2 laps that we had. So we have to be circumspect to see exactly what it was about. This weekend, we could well see Mercedes, Bottas and Lewis, or Lewis and Bottas just going off into the wind and destroying the opposition, because if they can ride the curves properly and go into their laps the way that they should have done without the problems that they had, they would have just walked the field. So, you know, Mercedes are very, very much are the team to beat. We've got to hope that Max Verstappen and Red Bull and Alex Albon can fight back and find something together with the Honda power unit to take on Mercedes, especially in those first opening laps, because if the 2 Mercedes get away, it's really, really going to be very, very difficult for the rest of the teams and drivers to catch them and even try and pass them. So we could have a very, very different race this coming weekend. But in Formula One, it doesn't just take, Gary, a week to fix some of the problems teams have.
No, absolutely not. And just apologies for the connection going down.
Both gone.
Are we both gone now? A week is nothing in Formula One, and I think, in light of the fact that nobody's really gone home, everybody's stuck around at the circuit. What they have is what they have for now, and in particular the engine, from the engine point of view, I don't think that you're able to do much different. So you've got to expect much the same from a speed, down the straight point of view.
Yeah, I was just watching the last Grand Prix, Gary, when you've got, and we haven't spoken about Williams, and maybe we should give them just 2 seconds as well, but Vettel was racing with George Russell. He really struggled to get past George Russell in the Williams, and that shows you that's where Ferrari are in terms of that kind of straight line pace. Yeah. And I think to wrap up this evening, let's just talk a little bit about, Gary, let's talk a little bit about Williams. Nicholas Latifi, first race, he did finish just outside of the points. I mean, imagine the irony if he had scored his first point for Williams and George Russell still hasn't, after Kubica scored it last year. But a guy's also going to have to lift his game if he wants to be serious about Formula One, because George Russell, in my opinion, is very much a benchmark driver for anybody racing in Formula One at the moment.
Yeah, and I think just for people that don't know, you've got to understand that when he's driven a Mercedes-Benz in testing, he's been quick in the car, faster than even maybe the pole position time from the Sunday before, whatever it may have been. He's been quick. He's definitely a quick driver. I think to be a second quicker than Latifi at this point in time, it's going to make Latifi's job very, very difficult. And you've just got to think back to Kubica as well. Wasn't as far as what Latifi is off of George Russell. So I'm glad that Russell's got a better car this year to at least show his potential, because I think, there's one driver that I'll certainly say that, needs, it would be a travesty if he didn't get into a top line team at some point, because I think certainly a driver that can win. You just got to look at Lando Norris and what he's doing, as we spoke about earlier on. I think Russell is there, maybe even a little bit better than that. And maybe I'm, speaking out of turn with that one, but certainly one of the top young hotshots that deserves to be up at the front of Formula One.
Yeah, he definitely deserves a better seat than what he's got at Williams. Speaking of Robert Kubica, he's actually going to be in free practice 1 tomorrow for Alfa Romeo, doing the first session in the place of Antonio Giovinazzi. Got to say, lasting on Giovinazzi, great to score points. Also, at one stage, Kimi was quicker than him, and Kimi got very unlucky with the second safety car, I must be honest. But Giovinazzi has to continue what he's doing, Gary, in order for him to progress in the world of Formula One as well. He has to beat Kimi Räikkönen.
Well, he was doing a good job. Qualifying was good. He was on track. He was, I think, performing this weekend. Definitely a better start to the season than he had last year. So I think, yes, he's doing what he can do. As you said, in the race and strategy and what, maybe he's got a couple of things to iron out there, but the pace certainly looks a lot better.
Fantastic. Gary, as always, just so much fun to chat with you, my buddy. I'm sure we'll chat over the weekend at length about the Grand Prix, but I can't wait. We've got another Grand Prix, and then next week we've got another Grand Prix, and we've got MotoGP. We can watch Brad Binder. I mean, I tell you, it's all just happening, and it's fantastic. Thank you, my buddy.
Thank you very much.
There we go. That is the F1 Pit Box for this evening. Thank you very much. Whatever comments have come through, we will definitely go through them. Also, on the F1 Sasha Facebook page, we have started a WhatsApp group, which is purely Formula One. No other shenanigans that take place in there. There's a WhatsApp number there. If you want to join, go and click on it and just give me your name and we'll add you onto our group, and we can keep the discussions going there as well. But from Fritz and Henk and Gary and myself and the whole F1 Pitbox team, thank you very much for your company. Enjoy the Grand Prix this weekend. We will catch you again very, very soon. Take care. Ciao, ciao.
Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at F1 Sasha.